Welcome back to Gary's Garage, where hopefully this will be the last time the Shogun will be up on the ramp. So last time I was here, I managed to get quite a lot of the rust repair done on the chassis and also managed to finish off the exhaust, although it was just leaking a little bit from all the joints, just where those V-band clamps haven't quite sealed properly, and also the brand new gaskets I put in onto the old flanges, they were just a bit rusty and they didn't seal very well either. So while I have been gone, I have had this over to the garage that my dad used to work at, and they have sealed up all the exhaust. It was blowing from every single joint, so they've put some RTV sealant around all of the joints, so that exhaust is now nice and good and solid and doesn't leak. And they have also sorted out the front inner CV boot on the passenger side, and also the rear brake on the driver's side, because that was binding. So they have sorted that, and it's back here so that I can do the final little bits of rust that I totally missed when I was here last time. I swear I was looking up and down the chassis for half an hour trying to find those yellow chalk marks. Could not see them at all the whole time I was here. And then I'm at home editing up the video, and there it is, clear as day, those bright yellow chalk marks on the body. Not the chassis, the body. So it is back here. I need to do those before I can take it for an MOT, which then hopefully it will pass on. And if that's the case, I'll bring it back and I will then protect all the underneath of the bits that I've done with some underseal, and hopefully that will make it good for the time that I'm going to be using it. So without further ado, let's get under the car and have a look at those rust patches and make a start on chopping them out and replacing them. Okay, so here are the two spots of rust. There's one around that body mount there, and just a little bit further along there is that one just there. So that's what I need to chop out and put some new metal in. So I will just get straight cracking on with it. So I decided to cut out all the boring bits of basically me standing in the way of the shot as I was cutting these things out. So I've got a nice little hole just there where there's no rust anymore, and then moving along to this one that kind of spread a little bit further and up onto the floor. So I've got a section inside the car that I've had to pull the carpet and wires back out the way to get to. So I now need to do some cardboard templates to fill in those holes and add all the strength back.
A few moments later.
So as you can see, I had to take the side step off to get better access to it, and coming down on the sill there was a spot just here where it had gone through, so I've plated that up, and also had to follow it up onto the floor. So that is now a nice plate in there. It looks a little bit dodgy from there, but it is plated again from underneath, so there's not going to be any water getting through there. And then down actually underneath itself, so that little outrigger there has been all boxed over, this bit on the sill all plated over, and there's the bit that covers all those holes on the floor. And then moving to this body mount, we have that plated over there. So that hopefully should be enough to satisfy the MOT tester. So what I'm going to do next is give that a very quick tidy up, and then we'll take it for an MOT. So since the last clip there is a change of location, and that is because the Shogun passed its MOT! Yes! And I have now brought it home. That is a huge amount of weight off of my shoulders, and I can now start to do the tiny little tweaks that are needed just to polish it off. The main core dangerous things with the rust on the chassis and that fuel pipe and the CV boot and the brakes are all sorted, and it drove home really, really nicely. I've never really been a fan of big cars with high raised seating positions. I much prefer lower, sleeker cars, you know, like the Anglia and the Mitsubishi and the Audi, the Legnum and the Audi. You know, they're much lower cars, much lower seating positions. You feel, or I feel, a lot better in them than being big up high on top, but I know that some people do really like it. But that said, it actually wasn't too bad to drive home. Thankfully it was a clear run, so I just set the cruise control most of the way to 70 and it just maintained 70 really nicely. The exhaust, I was really worried that it was going to be very drony, but actually at that kind of speed it's really subtle and quiet. It's got a nice bark to it when you put your toe down and you give it some load, but just cruising along it's a really, really nice sound, so I'm really super happy with that. The only thing I do need to do though is I need to sort out the tip of the exhaust, because that is still sticking out way past the bumper, and I wasn't too sure what I was going to do with it, but I have decided now that it is a Japanese car. It deserves a Japanese slash cut, so the thing I need to do next is get the exhaust, or just the final part of the exhaust, off the car and get it onto the bandsaw and chop that angle in it. So Alexa, open the garage door, and I can then go out and make a start on pulling the exhaust off. So one thing I found with the Shogun on the way home was that the cup holder, which I've removed from the centre console now, was missing one of the arms on one of the sides, so I could only actually hold one drink at a time, and only a very small one, not the larger one. So what I did was I pulled it apart and found that the pin there for this arm had broken off, and obviously we'd lost the arm. So what I did was I drew a template, filled in the circle, and then made up a paper template of the small arm, and decided that that wouldn't really do the job, so made a slightly longer template out of paper, which again was going to be slightly too big this time. So using that, I went on to making it out of plastic on the 3D printer. So my first attempt was a little bit too big, and that actually won't clear the fold there. So as it goes in, that pushes the arm in, folds this up, so obviously this is upside down, folds it up and pushes that in, but because of the size of the excess I put around the side here, that was too big to go in. So that was Mark 1. Mark 2 was that with a slightly smaller ridge, which did a better job at fitting and allowed that to sit down properly and all the way and go in, but the hole that I put in the middle there was too big. So we move on to Mark 3, which has a slightly smaller hole in the middle, and that was looking a lot better. But what I need as well is a spring to go in that groove, so that as the cup holder opens, it will automatically spring out. So I made myself a spring, but because of how I designed this, when the spring goes in and I put a nut or a bolt and a washer over the top, it would pinch down on this and stop it from moving. So revision 4 in plastic is much the same, but it has a raised piece here, so that when the spring goes in, it will sit and the washer will sit over the top and allow a small gap for the spring to come out the side. So that's pretty much where I am at the moment. I just need to drill one tiny little hole for the spring to sit in so that it doesn't rotate, and then hopefully the cup holder can all go back together and it can go into the car, and I will have a working cup holder again, or 2 working cup holders I should say. Rev limiter then. So that is the Shogun now with its first batch of work done, and it's on the road, and it is now officially part of my fleet for the moment. I am going to be doing some towing over the next couple of months, and the extended towing capacity of the Shogun over my Audi is certainly going to help make that a bit easier. One thing that I have noticed is that the fuel gauge for the LPG system, the liquid petroleum gas, it's got 4 little lights on the dash, and I managed to do the whole drive home with not a single one of those lights disappearing, which I think is probably wrong. I think it did have a pretty full tank when my dad parked it up a couple of years ago, and possibly that's just got the float valve stuck in its upright position. I'm hoping that maybe if I drain it all the way down, and I don't know, maybe go and give the tank a bit of a clout, it might joggle it into gear. So that's something I need to keep an eye on, because not knowing when you're going to run out of gas is not great, especially when there's a teeny tiny little fuel tank on it, petrol tank, because the normal petrol tank was taken off to put a smaller petrol tank and a bigger LPG tank on. So yeah, that's something I'm certainly going to have to keep an eye on. But there will be probably other things to happen on the Shogun over time, so of course I will bring you along. That's not the end of the Shogun, but hopefully next time it will be an Anglia episode. I now have the final piece of the charge corner puzzle, which is a nice spiffy radiator to replace the one that's down in the front. I really hope after all the measuring and the long delay in having it delivered that it does actually fit. So join me next time on Garry's Garage, where we will be working on the charge cooler system on the Anglia. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Bye.